inside for my submit button, I will add a few classes. So Bootstrap has built-in styles for buttons. So I can say btn primary, give it a margin in y direction of 3 units, and let's say we want a width of 100%. So right here we have a submit button, that is Bootstrap submit button. You can just search button over here and you will see what classes I have used. Let me just add quick comments here. So submit button maybe input, to do input right here. Okay, great. And this is my to do form. Great. So I have built out a UI, user interface, for entering my to do. Now let me work on this side. How do I display the to do? So the very first thing I need is a checkbox. Someone pointed out in the beginning that for the to do application, one component I need is the checkbox. Fortunately, checkbox is built right into Bootstrap. So I can just copy and paste Bootstrap's implementation of the checkbox. And before that, let me just create an unordered list. Let me give that unordered list an ID of to do list maybe. And inside, let me create a list item and copy paste whatever Bootstrap documentation says we need to implement for the checkbox. So here I might write my to do. Great. So as you can see, but again, I have my checkbox working correctly. Could someone point out what is looking not great right here in this right here? Could anyone tell me?
Dot.
I have my
Dot.
check.
Dot.
Yup. Why is that dot there? Would anyone like to tell me why?
Because we have created unordered list.
Yup. So one way to remove this is again using Bootstrap. Inside of this unordered list, I can say something like list unstyled. So list unstyled is a class that is built into Bootstrap. You can also do it with vanilla CSS as well. All right. So I have my list unstyled, and great. My to do is functioning properly, at least the UI part. All right, great. So now let's move on and write some JavaScript for this. To make this app actually work, let me actually create these to-dos and take cross, add a new to-do so that it automatically adds. Before I continue, anyone has any doubts up till now? This is just a revision of week 0. Just feel free to interrupt right now if you have any questions. Any questions? Okay, great. I see that on Discord nobody has any questions. All right, so let's move on. Jay, can you see thumbs ups on the screen? Would you let me know? Great. Okay, so I have created a new file called script.js. Let me just include this script in my HTML. So I'll write custom JS, and right here I will write a script tag. What is the script tag source? In this folder, a file called a script.js. I want it to be the JavaScript that the browser loads upon loading this page. All right. So let's start by storing our to-dos. So would anyone like to suggest how can I store my to-dos in JavaScript? What data structure should I use? Yup.
Array.
Great, great.
Array.
Yup. Let me start by creating an array. Let me call it to-dos maybe. And in this to-do, if I store your to-do 1, to-do 2, this works, right? Would anyone like to tell me what is wrong with this approach right now? How do I keep track of which to-do is completed or not? How can I solve this problem?
Objects.
Devansh is giving answers right here. Great answer, by the way. We can wrap this, each element of this array inside of an object using key value pairs. So what I am doing right now is I am constructing JSON, JavaScript object notation. So this is the way how data is transferred between the front end and the back end as well. So we will learn more about this in the coming weeks. But for now, let's just stick to understanding our to-do app. Yep. So what I have done right here is for each element in this array, I am prettier doing prettier stuff. Okay, so now I can somehow create a key of complete. Let's say this is not completed. And here also I can say complete is false. Okay, so what happens now is when I loop over this array, I will have an object for each item. This each item will have a text and a boolean if it is true or false. So I might need one more thing right here. Maybe I need to keep track of an ID just to make sure, just to keep track of what to do is, suppose if I want to remove a to do from the DOM. So I will track that to do not by the text, but using a unique ID. So I'll just give this one more attribute. So what you see right here is an array of objects. Would anyone like to ask a question if you have not understood what array of objects are?
Sir, what is an array of objects?
So, okay, so what array of objects is this? Using curly braces, we declare a JavaScript object. A object is similar to a dictionary in Python or a map if you are familiar with C++. So inside each element of this array, we have an object. So this object is, you might also call it a dictionary. It has key value pairs. So this is the key and this is the value right here. Any questions thus far? Other than Devansh, anyone has any questions? Great. Are you seeing thumbs ups on Teams? Great, great. What that complete is equal to false doing. Okay, so I need to keep track for the to-dos if that particular object, the to-do in that particular object is complete or not. So I'm storing it in a boolean, meaning if that is true, then that particular task is completed. If that is false, otherwise not. Does that solve your doubt? So I'm just keeping complete to keep track of whether the task is completed or not. Yep, great. So I think that solves our doubts. We have our example to-dos. Great. So now let's start by selecting objects from the DOM. Last week we saw how we can select elements from the DOM. Would anyone like to remind me? For example, if I want to select the list, so how do I select that list whose ID is to-do list? How do I select this list in my JavaScript?
Document.get element by ID.
Document.getElementById.
Yup. So I can say document.get element by ID, and it takes an argument, the ID of that element. Similarly, I might want access to my form. So I can say document.get element by ID, and what is the ID of the form? The ID of the form is to do form. To do form. What else do I need? I need the list, I need the form, and I need access to the input field where I will type my to do. So I can say to do text is equal to document.get element by ID. And have I given an ID to this input field? No, I haven't. So let me give this a unique ID. Let me call it, let's say, to do text, for example. Yup, great. So here I can say to do text. All right, so we have selected elements from the DOM. So what our HTML contains, HTML's body contains is our document object model, the DOM, that part that user sees. And the JavaScript we are running right here is what the user does not see. So I have selected elements from the DOM right here. And now let me first let my first task be to remove this list item right here. So I do not need this right now, so I'll remove it, and I'll just add it. Maybe I'll just comment it out because I'll need it sometime later. But for now, my unordered list is empty right here. So my very first task should be to somehow load all these to-dos onto the DOM. So for doing that, I will quickly write a render function. So rendering is a term which we will hear a lot when Sahil teaches us React. So he will teach us how we can render items into the DOM. So but for now, let me just write a function called render to dos, and what this function will do is it will loop over all of these to-dos and add them to the DOM. So to loop over this to-dos array, I will say something like to-dos dot for each, and this will give us an argument of to-do, and this is each to do. This is the object. This to do right here is the object. If you hover over it and you're following along, you will see something similar to this. VS Code will tell us that your to do object contains an ID, some text, and whether that to do is completed or not. So when looping over, first let me make sure that if the to do dot complete variable is equal to false, meaning if the to do is not completed, only then we want to render it in the DOM. Can anyone tell me how can I render HTML similar to this into the DOM using JavaScript? Anyone, feel free to unmute and answer. How do I render each list element into the DOM?
document.getElementById.value.
That is to get the to-do text. What I want to do right now is push all these to-dos inside of the unordered list. So I've selected the unordered list. So I can say something like list dot, what do I do now?
Inner HTML.
Document.
Yup, great. Yeah, go ahead. Document dot
No, this thing only inner HTML.
Yeah, so what I've done, right, what you were suggesting is selecting the element again, right? But what I have done is I have saved that element as a constant in my JavaScript. So I do not have to again and again write document.getElementById. by ID. I can just say list dot inner HTML plus equal to, meaning I want to append to the already existing inner HTML. And what I'll do is I'll just copy and paste this right here. All right. So I don't need a value ID. And here what I can do is I can use template literal. So what this allows me to do is it allows me to inject variables inside of my string. So I can say to do dot text. Okay, so I can see that my inner HTML will append this right here. Okay, so now if I save this and if I see in the browser, I don't think these to-dos will be rendered. Let's find out. And you all pointed out why isn't this working? It is a very simple thing that we need to do to make sure that this render to-dos function is running. Would anyone like to
To
point
call
that out?
function.
Yup, I have to call my function right here. So I can say render to dos and call it. And here you can see that my to do one from here and to do two is rendered inside of the DOM. All right. Any questions thus far? Any questions? Sahil, am I seeing thumbs up in the team? Great, great. So now let me just separate this part out into a separate function just to make our code look a little bit more cleaner. So the render to do function will take a to do as input, and right here I will just call the render to do function giving it an argument of my object right here. All right, so this will work as well, and yes, it is working. All right, great. So now let's try and handle the logic of actually taking a to-do from JavaScript and adding that to-do inside of this array. So maybe I'll write a function for that, add to-do, and inside of this to-do, I want to add the new to-do that I will receive as an argument to this function. For now, don't worry about where am I getting this to do, we'll figure it out. But for now, could anyone tell me, can I push objects inside of a JavaScript array, yes or no?
Yes.
Yes,
Yes.
so is this the correct syntax? Any guesses?
Yes.
Yup, it is correct. So now I just need to pass it an ID. The ID can be to-do.id because I'm getting a to-do object right here. Okay, that's why. So this already has been given to this function. We will write the function call in some time right now. So I'll just quickly write to-do का जो text है, text is to-do dot text and our complete is to-do dot complete. And now after we push this element in the array, we just need to render that to do to the DOM. That's why I separated out the function right here of actually displaying each to do to the DOM. Any questions thus far? Feel free to unmute. Okay, so I think this is clear right now. So now what we need to do is we need to listen for the submit event. Anyone would like to tell me? Everyone is raising their hands here. Would anyone like to tell me how can I listen for events?
Event
Document.add
listener.
event list.
Yup, great. So I can say form dot add event listener. So I need to listen for the submit event. Last week we saw something known as a on click event, and here we can say something like on submit right here. And what on submit takes in uh, uh, is a function, meaning we can tell on submission of this form, we can give it something that is known as a callback. So right here we will write an arrow function that takes an event as input. So this is by default provided to us by JavaScript. So what is happening in this line of code is whenever the form is submitted, all the code between these curly braces will run. Am I making sense? Yes or no? Sahil, do I see thumbs up on Teams?
So I have one doubt.
Okay, someone had a doubt. Please go ahead.
Yeah, can't we do this using on-click function instead of add event listener on submit?
Yup, we can do that. If I
So
give
it's the
a
same.
ID, yeah, it is the same. So if I give this submit button an ID of to do submit and listen for the on click event, that will do the same thing as well. But here there is some minor user experience detail that we miss out. So if we are using this to do app on a laptop, and on laptop, how do I submit a to do? I will just type it and press enter, right? So on pressing enter, this submit button won't click itself, right? And what our JavaScript will be listening for is that click. But if I listen for the submit event, then on pressing enter, this task will be submitted. Does that make sense?
Yes, got it. Thank you.
Great. So what the first thing I need to do is prevent whatever default things happen on submitting the form. So here I am just saying e.prevent default. You do not need to worry about this. It's just like when handling forms using JavaScript, this is what we do to prevent page from reloading. All right, so now on submit, I've written this function right here. So what should I do? Call the function, give it an ID of to-dos dot length, meaning whatever is the length of our current to-do array, we want that length plus 1 as our ID, and the text should be to-do text dot value. Someone suggested previously that we can use the dot value to get the content of our form field, right? Someone had suggested that we are using right here, and by default the complete will be false, right? Yep. And what we can do after this is just reset the to do text input field value as blank. All right, so now let's try and test it out. Is our to-do app actually working? So first, let me try and just remove all this default that I had for testing. And now we have an empty to-do array. And on writing our to-do, maybe follow at pettyboy on GitHub, and I submit this to do, and all right, I do not see that to do being rendered to the DOM. Anyone would like to point out what I might have done wrong?
I guess we have
We
Anyone?
not
have
called
to call
render
that
again.
function. Yeah.
So in the add to do function, I am calling render, right? So here I am adding a to do. I am calling this function. I am giving it a to do as input, and then I'm after running this add to do function, I'm calling the render function to render that to do. Where am I going wrong? Anyone would like to point that out?
The list HTML is commented out, I think.
Okay, so this is actually not the problem. That we are actually injecting code inside it, right? So that won't make much of a difference, will it?
Okay.
Okay, so let me just try and figure out the flow. So what the first thing that happens is when our render to do's function is run. So it renders these to do's, but this is empty, so nothing happens as such. And now when we submit, so let me just add a console.log here and make sure that this on submit event is actually happening. So I will maybe text something like form submitted. I'll open my console, add an example task, and I see here is the problem. The form is actually not being submitted because I have made a silly mistake right here. I'm listening for the on submit event, but there is no on submit event. The event is submit. Anyway, now if I test it out, follow at pattyboy on GitHub, and I see that this task is rendered to the DOM. Any questions thus far? Okay, great. So we have built a to-do app where we can add to-dos to our array. So I can say maybe this, something else, and all this is added. But I need to add one more functionality before I can say that my to-do app is fully completed. Would anyone like to tell me what am I missing right here?
Deletion.
Yup. Great. So let me just write a new function. Let me call that function complete to do. And in this complete to do, the first thing I need to do is actually find which to do I want to remove. And therefore, in the beginning, I had set up an ID for each to do, right? So inside of this to do's array of objects, I had a key called ID. So right here, while submitting the checkbox, so on ticking of the checkbox, I can write something like call a function that is defined in my JavaScript. So would anyone like to tell me what was that attribute of an input element whereby I can keep track of if it is checked or not? We had used this last week. It was
On change.
yeah, on change is actually not supported in vanilla HTML, but I think React has an on change listener, right? Yep, it does. We will see soon how all this hassle we won't have to go through when building the same app in React as well. So, but for HTML, we can write something as on click, and inside of on click, we can uh, give HTML the function that it has to run when this input box checkbox is clicked. So on clicking and in this checkbox, I want this function to run. Which function to run? This function right here, the complete to do function. Complete to do, and I'll pass in as arguments to that to do function the ID of that to do. So here in the render to do function, I am passing the entire to do object. So that to do object also has an ID. So right here I have also passed that ID inside of that function. So now only one task remains. I have to remove that object from the array. Um, how might I go about doing that? Could anyone tell me the approach, meaning what do I do first, what do I do next? Just the logic, not the syntax.
Pop.
Yeah, pop is one way of removing an element, but again,
Split or
I do not
slice,
want to
I guess.
completely delete that element. I just want
You
to
could store that
mark its
another.
complete. Sorry.
You could store those in another array and then remove it.
Yeah, so that would be slow, right? I'm copying from one array to another. So in the beginning, if you all recall, I have had this complete attribute, right? Uh, where is it? Right here. I have the complete attribute. So a much more efficient way of doing that would be setting the complete attribute to true, right? Is that faster and a better approach, right? Instead of copying data from one array to another array. So I'll go about doing that. Does that work? Yup, it does. So I can first start by finding the index of that to do inside of the array. So one way to do that is using the find index method I can use on the to do's array. I can say to do's dot find index. Find index gets the to do, and it allows us to check whether that to do ka ID, if that to do ka ID is equal to the remove ID that we have received from this function. If those are equal, then that is the index that we are trying to find in our to do's. Any questions thus far? Not understood the syntax for this. Any questions? Do I see thumbs up in the chat? Great.
Let's just take a moment to appreciate your design color combination here. What's that mean? और वही
अभी जावास्क्रिप्ट पे फोकस किया जाए. Okay, so now I have the index, and now what I want to do is update that complete attribute using that index. So I can say something like to do's may select the element with the to do index, and for that the complete attribute I want to set it to true, meaning that this to do is completed. So now just one thing I need to do again. I had done that in the add to do function as well. Would anyone like to point out what do I need to do after marking to show the user that that to do is actually completed or not? Anyone?
Put a dash on to do text in render. Yes.
Yeah, maybe I can do that. But for now, if I want to just remove that to do from the DOM, since I have removed that to do from the array, one way to do is just again call the render to do's function. Does that work? So I can just again call the render to do's function, And now let me see what's happening. As I can say task 1, some example other task, gibberish I'm typing right now. And now if I mark this to do as complete, something is going wrong. Would anyone like to tell me what is going wrong? I will give you all an hint. My mistake is inside of this function right here. The render to do's function, I'm missing something. I think it will be difficult to point out. It will be difficult to point out for y'all, so I will just tell y'all. Because I'm appending the inner HTML each time, so when I again render all to-dos at once, what I might want to do is just say something like list dot inner HTML is equal to empty. Why am I doing this? Just so that before I re-render all to-dos, the previous to-dos are removed from the DOM. So now if I run, and now everything is working fine. I can do something a little more fancy here and just add a set timeout to just show that that to-do is actually disappearing in front of the user. So I can use a set timeout function. The set timeout takes a function as an argument, and inside inside of that function, inside of the set timeout function, I can then call the render to do's function. And I think just to look at the syntax, yep, I'll wait for, so what this line of code is doing is it will wait for 1 second before re-rendering the entire DOM. So here, some example to do's, and now when I so now when I mark the to do as completed, I should be seeing a 1 second delay. Oh, sorry, I wrote this on the wrong function. Need to write it right here. And some example tasks. And here you can see I have a 1 second delay right here. All right, so do I have more time? One hour is done. एक फंक्शनैलिटी लोकल स्टोरेज वाला बता दूं? बता दूं? टाइम है, ठीक है. Okay, so any questions thus far before we set up the functionality such that on reloading this, that to-dos do not disappear? So any questions thus far, just feel free to ask or leave it on Discord. Any questions? Have you all shared the source code repository? Okay, so the repository is also shared, so you can look at the source code, and if you have any questions, feel free to interrupt right now, and then I'll move on to the implementing the feature whereby I can save all my to-dos in memory. Tanvi, if you could set up a poll for yes, understood or no. If you think this is getting a bit boring, just feel free to leave it on Discord. Is this getting mundane or boring? थोड़ा स्पीड फास्ट स्लो क्या करना चाहिए बताओ. Okay, so it is leveling up. So are you all able to understand what's going on? Should I go slower? Just vote on the poll that is being set up. On Discord, the month of MERN channel, please go ahead and vote. Yep, I'll go a bit slower. Sure, sure. All right, so a majority of you all have understood the render concept at least thus far, and how I'm writing different functions, listening for events to complete my to-do app. If you all want me to redo any particular function or part of the JavaScript, please feel free to ask right now. And now we will then move on to implementing saving each to-do in memory. All right, so great. Um, okay, so now let's go ahead and try to save all our to-dos inside memory. Okay, so I have a question. Is inner HTML a keyword or inner HTML is actually a keyword that I have on this HTML element right here. So when I select an HTML element, I have a keyword called the method type, something like a method, where I can say dot inner HTML and I can update the HTML inside of that particular element. Yeah, that particular HTML tag. Yup, great. Any other questions? All right, so I think I'm good to go. Do I see thumbs up? Thumbs up दिख रहा है क्या? चलो ठीक है. So now we have something called as local storage API when we use JavaScript, when Chrome runs our or any other browser runs our website, we have something called as local storage, meaning we can store strings inside of local storage. So one way to save these to-dos even after the user reloads the page is by using the local storage and fetching and giving data to the local storage. So I can do something like in the beginning, first I might want to get the item. This takes a key. So what I might want to call where I my to-dos, I can say to-dos in memory. And right here, I will receive all the to-dos that are in memory, that I have saved in memory. So const to-dos. Again, I have used let over here, I have declared to-dos. So what I will do in the beginning is set all my to-dos to whatever the value this to-dos in memory gives me. So I can again just wrap this inside of JSON.parse. Anyone would like to tell me what JSON.parse will do for me?
It will parse string to object.
Yeah, so as you said correctly, that this right here is an array of objects, right? But local storage only stores strings. So what JSON.parse, this is actually built in, I have not written any of the logic. This will take that string and convert it into an array of objects for me. So I can say json.parse whatever this is right here. And now, and after this only I want to render all the to-dos to memory. So the very first thing I am doing is getting the to-dos in memory. So let me just say check if what is there anything in my local storage. Local storage. I can see that the local storage ka length is 0, right? So local storage is empty right now. And what happens if I reload? I get an error right here. Cannot read property of null. So what is happening right here is because I have nothing stored inside this key, this value of to-dos, which is this right here, is being set to null. But I do not want it to be set to null. So what can I do? Any suggestions? Would anyone like to tell me how can I prevent this from being set to null?
And operand.
You could give some default.
Yeah, I can give some default, and instead of the AND operand I can use something called OR, meaning if I use this bar right here, this two bars actually, this is JavaScript's version of OR. So in Python we can use the OR keyword, and in other most other programming languages we use two bars to identify as OR. So meaning if this returns null, I will set this to-dos variable to the empty list. Am I making sense? Yeah, great. So this to do, if this is returning null, then set it to default. And now if I reload the page, I still see the error for some reason. Okay, got it, got it. Yep, now there are no errors. Uh, this fave icon you can ignore. But yes, also my local storage is still empty. Now, what other thing I need to do is whenever I'm adding a to-do, what I can do is save that to-do inside of my local storage, right? So next time so now I've handled the logic of actually saving getting the to-do from memory. And now what I have to do is actually uh, give that to-do, save the to-do inside memory. So I have already gotten to-dos from memory. Now I need to save to-dos in memory. So I will just quickly write another function. Function save to-dos in memory. Great. And what this function will do is it will set uh, the key to-dos in memory inside of local storage to all the to-dos we have. So I can say local storage dot set item this to-dos in memory key, and this set item function takes another argument which is the actual value. So we need to save to-dos, but again here to-dos is an array of objects. So JavaScript, the local storage API only stores key value pairs where the value is a string. So I need to somehow make this to-dos array into a string. So I don't, so one way of doing that is just how we call json.parse. There is json.stringify, which will convert this JSON into a string. And now there's one last thing we need to do. Where should I call this function? Would anyone like to tell me? Where should I call the save to dos in memory function?
The function where we save in the array.
Add to do's.
Yup, we can call this function inside the add to do function. So before I render, I might just want to save it in memory. Okay, so now let's try it. Follow at Boy on GitHub. And now if I reload the page, I see that this is persisting. ABC, some random to-dos. Okay. And now we see that even after I have reloading this page right here, these to-dos are still staying inside memory. So now we have built our complete to-do app. So if you all have any questions, just feel free to unmute and ask. I will just reshare uh, the exact JavaScript file that I have coded right here inside the month of MERN channel, so you all can refer it. Any questions? I am here, and Sahil, come over. Sahil is taking the quiz. Sahil ले रहा है. अच्छा तन्वी ले रही है. आ जाओ. Any
Shouldn't we
questions?
delete? Shouldn't we delete from the local storage too?
Why do you want to delete from? Oh, okay. Yeah, right. So I am only saving after add to do. So I have to also save after complete to do. Great catch. Great catch. Thank you. So now our to do app is complete. Maybe I should test it. Oh, okay. Again, one more bug. So right here, if I in my form, if I say that this task is required, this input field is required, then I won't have to face this empty thing ka problem as well. So okay, now let me just add a new task, and if I mark this as complete, I will re-render all the to-do. It will remove that from to-dos local storage, and now it's working again. Great. Thank you for the catch. This is required. So now if I write an empty field, I am asked to fill this field as well. Great. Any other questions? Any other mistakes I might have made? Any improvements you all want to suggest to improve the performance or alike for this app? Just feel free to let me know.
We can add a clear button to clear all the to-dos list.
Yeah, we can do that as well. So we can write another function where we uh, set this to-dos variable to an empty list again. So I can say clear to-dos, and I can say to-dos is equal to empty list. I'll save that empty list in memory. And what else I need to do? I want to render all to-dos again. So right here I can, maybe where should I add my, okay, here I can add a dot button dot btn danger. I think danger is the word for a red button. And here I can say clear to-dos, and on click I want to run which function? Clear to-dos function. I think this should work. Yup. Great suggestion. Any other suggestions we can add?
Also, can we make the clear to do's button disappear until at least one to do is there?
Yeah, we can write some check maybe. So I can remove this from the HTML, and inside of my script on initialization I can say that if to-dos dot length is equal to 0, I do not want to render this. Yeah, great suggestion.
Oh,
Or I can say
yeah.
display dot style dot display is none. Great suggestion. Any other ways I can improve this, or any other questions, any part that you might not have understood? All right, so are we good to go for the quiz? Is there a way to individually clear a to-do? Yeah, so you can mark a to-do as complete. Is that what you are asking? So right now, if I mark this to do as complete, yeah, so that is already implemented, right? We wrote a mark complete function as well. Yep. Great. Tanvi, if you could set up a poll on Discord. Everything is clear and we are going on the quiz. So
Cool guys, so I'll be starting now. Oh, I'm sorry. Okay, so we'll start. Yeah. That's fast to get more points. The rules are the same. Which of the following is the correct syntax to create a function? Okay, so you have function, then this wala bracket, and then this curly wala brackets. Then we have
Arrow function and function.
This is not arrow. Okay, so time's up and let's see the leaderboard. It's gonna take some time. Okay, first option correct. Amazing. Hussain is there cheering. Okay, so next question do you have to enter?
Guys, if you have any doubts for anyone's answers or if you don't understand anything, let me know. I'll explain you the concept.
Okay, so it's gonna take some time. Okay, leaderboard, and we have DJ, जो भी है, amazing. Then we have the last man and Uday, God, Vinay, and so on. Congratulations. Then we have question 2. Okay, so enter. Okay, same rules. Then we have which function would you preferably use to delete an item from to-do list? Okay, so we have reduce, filter, delete, or remove. You guys are 9.
Guys, the question is prefer. It's not the right or the wrong answer. Which should you prefer?
2, 1, and time's up. Okay, so remove has been okay.
Prefer, guys.
Prefer is filter. Devansh will explain us why.
The reason why filter is because there are multiple ways to delete a function and you can do it by using remove also. But filter is better because not only it maps through all the data, but also while mapping through, it has its syntax where you can put in the if else condition inside the filter method. So it will make it easier when you are just filtering through all the to-do list rather than deleting it. So it is a better process. So usually people prefer filter over delete. So keep that in mind next time.
Delete is not wrong, but preferred is filter. Okay, so we have the leaderboard again, and okay, whoever got the correct answer. So congratulations, God, and he's passed the result well. Okay, so now we have the third question. Okay, which is the correct syntax for set timeout?
You know the set timeout function we use to delay a function execution? That is the function we are talking about. So from the options, which one is the correct answer?
Is it set timeout milliseconds, set timeout, or then bracket, then curly bracket seconds, and so on? Okay, so 12, third one. Oh, 12 people have got it correct. So I think amazing. Congratulations. Do you guys need an explanation? Let me know. I'll just show the leaderboard.
It's a syntax, guys. Go through it once, so you will know which one is the right one.
Okay, so.
Damn, DJ.
Ooh. Okay, we surpassed Lord. We have DJ, the fastest, the last man. Then there's God. Then Med, Monjiro, and so on. Okay, so we have the fourth question now. Answer fastest to get more points. Okay, how to add an object in an array of objects. Now we discussed this topic, so I hope you guys will know this.
Array of object, guys. This was my question. मैंने doubt पूछा था ये.
और हुसैन ने explain भी किया था भाई.
Come on.
okay, so the correct answer is push. What? Oh, it's not. It's my bad. I said the question, so apparently the answer is push. And 14
Happens,
people.
guys. Happens. Everyone has doubts. Hota hai.
14 people have answered correctly. I'm really sorry for this.
If anyone needs an explanation why your answer is wrong, we are sorry. That's the explanation for this time.
So DJ is still leading. I'm sorry for the other 14 people who answered correctly. Really sorry, people. I hope it's not. Okay.
What is the attribute we use to inject value in the DOM element? Insert in DOM, inject HTML, inner HTML with small HTML. GG. Good confusion.
Okay, time's up. And inner HTML is the correct answer. 14 people have answered correctly. Congratulations, people.
I hope these are the same 14 people who got the previous one wrong. Now it's balanced out.
Thanks. Okay, so
DJ, we were betting on you, yaar.
last man, Vinay. Okay, so we have the last man, the first one. Then we have Vinay, and then we have Biryani. So congratulations, guys.
Congratulations, guys.
Okay, so now Sahil, you'll take over for the next session.
Okay, am I audible?
Yes.
So, hello everyone, my name is Sahil and I'll be taking you through the basics of React. Now, so in the previous module, we saw that Hussein took us through a to-do app and it was a very huge, cumbersome code. This is where React basically comes in. As you can see, first of all, why do we need to actually learn React? So React is basically a JavaScript library and it was developed by engineers at Facebook. Now, there are a few major reasons why people choose to code in React. React is fast and it handles very complex updates in a very short amount of time and it is very quick and responsive. React code is basically modular, so all of your code is divided into modules and components, so you could reuse your code again and again, so that is very efficient. React can scale very well across larger programs, and React is very popular and there is a huge community of React developers. Also, the job market is very much in demand for React developers. Now, moving on, you could see on your screens this funny-looking code. Now, does anyone want to guess in the meet that what is this code?
It's printing hello world.
Right. But is this JavaScript or is this HTML? What is this code exactly?
JavaScript.
JavaScript.
Okay, we have JavaScript in the meet answers. Anyone else would? Okay, right. So that is the correct answer actually. This is a JSX element, and you basically code all of your React application in JSX elements. So what is JSX? JSX is a syntax extension for JavaScript, and it is used to write React code, and it looks a lot like HTML. In the previous slide, as you can see, it looks a lot like HTML. But what basically JSX is it is not valid JavaScript, and browsers can't read it. JSX elements are converted into JavaScript code by Babel, which is a compiler for JavaScript, and that reaches our web browser, and then our web browser renders the React components. Moving on, JSX elements are treated as JavaScript expressions, and they can go anywhere where JavaScript expressions can go. So you could like pass JSX elements in a variable, or you could store it in a function or in an array of objects, as Hussein taught you all, and you name it. So now you'll know more about JSX and the other things as we code along. So I would like you to open up your code sandbox, go to codesandbox.io, and I'll be sharing a final link with you all that you could refer to. Tanvi, if you could please just send this. All right, what we'll be making is this basic app, this basic React app. It is a similar to-do app, and as you can see, it has 3 cards. Now, when we click on the delete button, a modal appears, and you could either click on confirm or cancel or on the backdrop to go back to our original page. And this is the basic functionality which we are trying to implement. And via this, you will be learning how React actually works. So I'll now go ahead and I'll clear all of this code out. Firstly, I'd like to point all of your attention towards line number 3. Would anyone like to guess what line number 3 is actually doing? Export default function app. Any guesses?
Export app function to other like JavaScript files.
Correct. Correct. Absolutely correct. I'd like to take you through the code of this basic React application. We have a single index.html, and React renders that only. So it fetches that, and that index.html is the single HTML file which is rendered. You could see in index.html there is a div called root, and that is being fetched via index.js. So this is basic JavaScript code, document.get element by id root, and we are then rendering all of this. And as you can see on line number 9, app is a component which is being rendered. And all of your code which you write in app.js would be rendered in the root div. I would like to pause and ask if you all have any doubts. You could put it on Discord or in the chat, or unmute and answer. Does anyone have any doubts? All right, if you don't have any doubts, could you please just give me a thumbs up in the chat, so I'll continue ahead. Okay, so I'll move forward. Now moving on to writing your first components in React. Firstly, the return function will just return one div. So what we'll do is we'll write a div. And we'll have an h1 in it. This would read to do. And we'll have another div. and then we'll have an h2 inside of that. Which would read the name of your card, and we'll have one more div. So I'm basically breaking all of this into different divs so that it is easier to manage and easier to style as well. And finally, we'll have a button. Which would say delete. All right, so as you can see on the right hand side, we have a basic JSX element, but this does not particularly look visually appealing to your eyes. So what I've done is I've created a styles.css and just quickly copy and paste this. So you could find this styles.css on the Git repo after the session. And yeah, so this brings some basic styles into our component, but this still does not look like a card to me. So what I'm gonna do is I'd like to take I'll take you to a trip down the memory lane. Remember in HTML, y'all used class as an attribute to elements. Similarly, we have class name in JavaScript. Now, y'all might be wondering that why are we using class name? Because a class is a JavaScript keyword, and you cannot use reserved words in your components. Hence, we use class name. So I'll give this a class name of card. And this is all due to the styles.css. So as this is not a CSS lecture, I'll just be using the preset CSS. The next div would have a class name of actions. So that would bring our delete button to the right, and button would just have a basic class name of btn. Right. So now as we can see that we have created a card which looks just like the previous one. But what if I want to like duplicate these cards and reuse them in my to-do app? What do you think you would do in this scenario? Anyone in the chat or in the meet can unmute and answer.
Create another component of card.
Correct. So basically तुम लोग क्या करोगे? That तुम लोग ये पूरा div copy करोगे? Control C and
we can create a function and then call it again and again.
Maybe, but this is what I would do as a very lazy developer. I just go Control C and Control V and I'll get all of my cards in the same place. पर ये है आम जिंदगी, as you all know. What we'll do is mentor जिंदगी, ठीक है? So I'll just take this away and I'll cut all of this. All right, so I'll just be cutting this div off here. And what I'll do is I'll create a components function folder over here, and this is standard practice that you would use all of your components and you would store it in a separate folder. So I'll just create a to-do.js file right here, and I'll just write a basic function. So let to do equal to function. I hope you all are familiar with arrow functions. So what I've done is I've written a basic arrow function, and I will return all of this, and I will write the same line, default export to do right here. Right, and what I would do is I'll just import our to-do.js, import from /components/to-do. And what we can now do is we can call our element, so as to say, as a custom HTML element, if you could relate to that. So now we have the same output, but our app.js is looking very neat as of now. So do you have any doubts so far? Anyone would like to unmute and ask if you all have any queries? All right, so I'll be moving on. So to replicate this, I'll just write 3 to-dos. So, and voila, just like that, we have 3 of our cards over here. Now we want to be working with dynamic content and not static content, right? So what we can do is we can pass different attributes into our components via whatever attribute name you want, because this is completely your element. So you could feel free to write anything and pass anything into it. So I'll just be writing text, and I'll give this, I'll just give this a text of ABC, another a text of XYZ, and our third one a text of RS. But on the right, we can see that जो text अपन ने pass किया card के अंदर, that is not being rendered properly right here. Why is that? Because to do में हमने text के लिए कुछ define किया ही नहीं है. So we'll have to do that. So this is where props come in. Props is short for properties, and you could pass in different properties into your JSX elements by using the props keyword in the function argument list. And what I'll do is here, instead of card, I would like to render props.text, which was our field. But as you can see, props.text is being rendered because this is a JavaScript element, and you can write valid JavaScript by using curly braces. And here we have dynamic output. So now we are well versed with dynamic outputs. So I'd like to pause over here and ask if you all have any doubts with this particular section of code.
Is there any way to use a for loop maybe?
Yeah, sure. You could write a for loop, but actually what we'd rather do is we could, over here we want to use just 3 cards. So I'll just be rendering all these 3, and then you could like what you can do is you could change all three of your cards according to your needs. So that is up to you completely. But yes, we can use for loops over here. Anyone else? All right, so moving forward, we can see in our final app that when we click delete button, we have a nice backdrop and a nice model coming up, and we don't have that in our app as of yet. So we'll just go ahead and create those two elements, those two components. So I'll create a new file called modal.js, and I'll create a new file called backdrop.js, and this would be just basic JSX code, which I'll use from our pre-built app, so as to save time. While I set this up, you could unmute and ask any other doubts as well. All right, so we are done with our modal.js, and yeah,
we don't have the space to add to-dos, right? Till now.
I didn't get your question actually.
I'm saying that have we added the space to add more to-dos in this list?
Yeah, you could add more to-dos. What you would rather do is you could go here and you can replicate this.
Okay.
And app.js is basically your control screen. So you will control your entire app from app.js, and all of the cards you want to render would be rendered over here.
Okay.
So I'll explain what modal.js is. Modal.js is basically a single div which says, "Are you sure?" And it has two buttons, cancel and confirm. As you can see right here, "Are you sure?" Cancel and confirm. And this is just a single div which has the CSS styling. And backdrop is this background which is light green color, and as you can see, you are unable to interact with the rest of the screen until you exit out of this. So we need to add all this functionality in our React app. What I'll now do is I'll just quickly import these two elements. Import modal from component / modal, and I'll just import backdrop. And I'll simply render our components right here. So like this. Okay, so as you can see, you are unable to interact with the rest of the screen, and you are unable to cancel or confirm this unless you refresh your application. All right, so this is being statically being rendered on top of our to-do. Now, what we want to do is that we want to click the backdrop to exit from this. So this is where the state, the concept of state comes in, and it is a very intuitive concept. Like state मतलब क्या कि ये backdrop जो है खुला हुआ है, and so set backdrop is set to true, and when you click on the backdrop it would be set to false, and then your backdrop and your modal would be hidden. So to implement that functionality, I'll go into todo.js, and what I'll do is I'll import something called useState, which is nothing but a React hook. Now I said a word called React hook. What are hooks basically? Hooks are nothing but literal hooks which hook into your components, and they help manipulate the state of the object, so to say. So I'll import useState from React, and what I'll do is I'd like to pause and ask if you all have any doubts at the moment. Okay, so no one is unmuting, so I'll continue. So over here I have the useState hook, and what I'll now do is all right. So Tanvi has put in a poll on Discord. I'd like you to answer that really quickly. So have you all understood all the concepts till now? So quickly head over to Discord and you could all right, there are most of you all answering yes. All right, so I'll now continue. So we have our let to do right here, and I'll call the useState hook, which would initially be set to false because अपने को starting में backdrop नहीं देखना. So the initial state would be false. And what useState does is it returns us two values. So it returns us two values, and it would be an array basically. So we write hooks with a const. That was what I was referring to, const, and it gives us two elements, an array of two elements. So I'll like to name it is modal open, and the other one would be a function. So I'll name it as set modal is open. This is basically a convention के जब भी useState hook use करते हैं तो first वाला would be a variable and second function name would be set variable. So that is what is being followed over here in camelback casing. So const is modal open would initially give a value of false over here. Now I'll just quickly go ahead and render this. Now I need to import our modal over here. So I'll just head over to app.js and I'll remove modal and backdrop from here. I'll take these two imports and I'll head over to todo.js and I'll import them here. So we have /modal and we have /backdrop. All right. Now I'll just write a valid JavaScript expression in this curly braces, which would check if is modal open. If this is true, I would just return modal, else nothing would be rendered onto our screen. So what I'm using over here is a ternary operator. All right, ये मेरी खराब आदत है Python वाली, so this should be null. And as you could see, our modal isn't open right now, so it isn't being displayed. Now, when I click the delete button, the class of modal should change to true. So what I'll do is I'll add an onClick over here. So this is an attribute called onClick, and onClick is valid only for traditional inbuilt JSX elements, not for our own custom built components. So onClick, and I'll write a delete handler over here. And what I'm basically doing is I'm referencing a function right here. I'm not calling it. So this would be a function call. And why I am not calling this function right here is because जब भी तुम्हारा Babel और JSX ये compile करेगा, it would execute this function as soon as it encounters it, because this is a function call. And we don't want that. We want a function reference so that जब भी तुम्हारा button click होगा तभी ही जो function है that would fire up. So what I'll now do is I'll create a function. So function, I showed you all arrow functions. Now I'll be using the traditional function, and this would be named as delete handler. What it would do is it will simply set modal is open to true. Now, as we can see, when we click the delete button, our functionality is working. So initially, our modal is hidden, but when we click the delete button, our modal pops up. Do you guys have any doubts in this particular section? Feel free to unmute.
Guys, किसी को भी डाउट है ना तो प्लीज पूछो. हम लोग इधर ऐसा
अरे guys, informal session है, so don't be like.
तुम लोग को गेम खेलना है, फिर भी हम लोग गिनना है. तुम लोग सिर्फ बोलो.
हाँ भाई, गेम खेलना है, मूवी देखना है, सब चलेगा इधर.
मेरा रिकॉर्ड.
All right, guys, any doubts?
Guys, thumbs up यार. Come on, ये हुसैन में पार्शियलिटी नहीं चलेगा.
हाँ, तुम लोग हुसैन को फेवरेटिज्म दिखा दो यार. मेरे को ऐसा कोई थम्स अप नहीं देता.
सबने दे दिया.
No doubts. Okay, cool. So I'll now be continuing this. So similarly, जैसा हमने modal के लिए एक hook बनाया use state का, I'll just make this for the backdrop as well. So I'll paste this, and this would be is backdrop open and set backdrop open. Both would have a initial state of false, and when our delete handler fires up, we would set both of them to true. Okay, my bad. I did not call the is backdrop open. This ternary operator, guys. I hope you all know ternary operators. They function as basic if-else blocks. And now if I refresh and click on the delete button, voila, you can see that the backdrop is here as well. Now I'll be moving on to add the the cancel button functionalities and the backdrop functionalities over here. But before I move on to the final concluding module of this React session, I'd again like to pause and ask if you all have any queries or doubts, because hooks are a crucial topic for React. So if you could take to Discord if you all have any doubts.
I had a doubt.
Go ahead.
Yeah. So like here we could we have used a variable instead of a hook, like
no, actually what hooks do is they imagine a literal hook which hook into the state, and then you could use that hook to change the functionality based on state. Does that answer your doubt?
My basic point was like we are using ternary operators. So if we had defined maybe a variable, and then if we were changing the value of that variable, and then
sure, you could use the flag functionality जैसा तुम normal programming में करते हो, for loop में flag set करके flag equal to 0, flag equal to 1, वो करके भी you could check. But I am using ternary operators because it makes your code very concise, so to say. इसको I could make even more concise by just using the ampersand. So here, and इसको भी मैं हटा दूंगा null. So ये क्या करेगा? Basically this is an advanced JavaScript concept where if you just write a function like isModal open and function name, basically expression, and you check it with a component, and if both are true, then in that case modal would be rendered. So initial state अगर तुम्हारा false है and modal का तो like truth ही value रहेगा हमेशा, so that would amount to being false, and जब तुम लोग बटन क्लिक करोगे तो तुम्हारा state true हो जाएगा and modal would render. So this would be more concise than that, and using flags would like increase the length of your code tremendously. So we just rather do this. So I'll be going on to the backdrop. Right. So here we are on our todo.js and we are rendering our backdrop. And as you can see, we have an on-click function right here. So what we can do is we can pass we will pass an on-click value right here, attribute. But as you all know कि on-click जो attribute है, that is only for built-in traditional JSX components. So what you want to do is you want to set up the on-click part on your own into your backdrop.js. So I'll just go to backdrop.js and do is I actually had to code this, but ये template के साथ ही आ गया. So let's just let it be there. What I was gonna do is यहाँ पे props pass करेंगे. So all of the data you are passing into backdrop would be passed via props and into our component. Then अब यहाँ पे div is a traditional built-in component. So basically they have an on-click attribute. So what we are doing is तुम्हारा जो backdrop का on-click है, we are passing it onto the div का on-click. So that is what is being done over here. On-click has props.onClick. So now if we and now I'll just write a function right here, close modal handler. I'm referencing to the final output because you would want to code along and check for the output as well after the session. So, and that would really be recommended so as to learn all of the concepts covered so far. And now I'll just write a close modal handler, and what I'll do is यहाँ पे I'll just set both of these two false. Guys, by the way, there's a quiz coming up super soon after this, so stay tuned for that. I'm having an error over here, so on line 12, let's see what that is about. All right, so यहाँ पे मैंने function लिखा ही नहीं, so that would resolve it. And now if we click on our backdrop, you could see that backdrop works as desired in our final output. Now what I'll do is configure the cancel and confirm button functionality since they aren't working right now. But उससे पहले किसी को डाउट है कि backdrop में क्या हुआ, on click कैसे configure हुआ, backdrop में अभी click करने पे क्यों backdrop respond कर रहा है, पहले क्यों नहीं कर रहा था, any such doubts? If you all don't have any doubts, could you just give me a thumbs up again real quick in the chat? All right, I could see a few thumbs up in the chat, so I'll now continue. What I'll now do is go ahead and write an on cancel functionality and an on confirm functionality. And what I want to do is I want to call the same close modal handler. So because that is what our functionality is कि इस पे click करेंगे तो बंद होना चाहिए. So that should be called, but modal does not have an on cancel and on confirm configured. So I'll just go ahead and do that real quick. So for that, I'll just go to modal and we have a cancel handler and a confirm handler on click. So buttons would have an on click equal to, we'll have a cancel handler and in the confirm button we'll have a confirm handler. So we'll have a confirm handler right here, and I'll set those functions over here. So function cancel handler and a function called confirm handler. And what I will now do is I'll take props and I'll just write props dot on cancel, and I'll have props dot on confirm. So to do .js we have on cancel and on confirm, and I think it should work. Just a sec. We have to call them as functions. So, and finally we are able to create our first React application, and all of our functionalities work as shown in our final project. So you could just go to GitHub and you could like review the code and you can practice along. And I think you all have the code sandbox link as well, so you could directly go to sandbox and code. So all right guys, that was it from my side. Now we have a short quiz coming up, and that is it for the session on React. And next week we'll be having a full MERN stack application, and you will be coding a full application with Jay and Hussein. And I think Tanvi will take over. Medhavi will take over. So over to you guys.
Okay, I'm going to start the quiz in 5, 4, 3, 2, 1. Let's go! Okay, the first question is, which of the following is not a React hook? First, JSX, use effect, use state, or use context. Oh my god, let's see if that's correct. Okay, that's correct. 13 people have opted for the correct answer.
Okay, so guys, use effect, use state and use context. Generally use से start होते वो hooks रहते हैं, and JSX is the kind of the syntax in React.
आगे नहीं शो है.
Question hanged support team.
क्या सीन है bro?
the chat, guys.
Click on this and then go next. So yeah, we have the leaderboard people. We have Carl, Gustav. Oh, Gustav is the Ratatouille wala guy, na? Who is this? Whoever this is, amazing. You're leading the leaderboard. Then we have Casper, Vinay, and then Not God. Okay. Who is Not God?
Not God.
Okay, let's go to the second question now.
So sorry for that.
I'm really sorry for the mess up. Enter. So the second question is, which hook is used to handle state and functional components? Options are handle state, this state, use state, or state. और वो वाला bracket. And the bracket. ये वाला
And the
bracket. I'm not supposed to. Okay, let's see. Oh my god, only 14 people answered correctly. Let's go. Okay, Rudra, you're leading, and then Carl Gustav, and then Not God. कौन है Not God? Let's go to the third question now. The third question is, which phenomenon is used to pass data from parent to child components in React? So the options are args, params, quirks, or props. Three, two, one.
It's a props is the correct answer. 12 people have answered correctly. Congratulations, leaderboard.
Yay!
Okay, so
Rudra, you're leading. You're still leading. That's nice. And then Vinay, you're on third. Okay.
So we have Not God leading. Hello, unicorn. Then we have Vinay. Then Rudra have gone down, bro.
Look at the
You can do it
camera. We're rooting for you.
again. Yes, we're rooting for you. Let's go.
And then question number 4. That is, what is the name of the compiler used to convert React to Vanilla.js? Options are Node, Babel, NPN, or Express. क्या है बताओ? Focus हम है.
2, 1. Time's up. Okay.
Okay, 8 people have answered it correctly. And why was there a confusion between Node and Express?
Just a second. We'll explain it.
Yeah, so people actually.
So Node and Express is something we deal with in backend, and npm just to confuse you, that is the package manager. Babel is the transpiler which we use to convert our actual React to the vanilla Java.
Yay. Okay, leaderboard pe Vinay, you are leading, and then Kennedy. Okay, you're second. And Jungkook, you're third. Last question. And the last question is Vanilla.js valid under React? Let's see. Yes, no, it depends on the circumstances, or only if you import Vanilla.js. Come on. वे नो हुआ ना.
Wow.
Oh my God. कुछ ज़्यादा ही है.
You can use vanilla.js and React.
Let's see who's leading
From
now.
the god himself.
Okay.
Vinay boy.
I guess Vinay is gonna win. Oh my God, Vinay, you won. Woohoo!
ये last week वाला ही है. पूछ last week वाला.
तो लास्ट वीक वाला ही है क्या?
हाँ.
अच्छा हाँ. Okay, wow, nice. Nice. We are rooting for you.
Thank you so much guys for coming in. It was a wonderful session. ये हम लोग के team bye बोल रहे सब.
Bye bye.
Bye.